Good morning. How are you all doing? How are the rest of you? Good to see you. Thank you, man. That fires me up. Seeing young people take a step like that and make a commitment like that's a pretty big deal. Over the last 2.5 years, we've had over 50 students that have taken that pledge and are leading the way. I believe change is going to happen in those schools because of young people standing up for Jesus. And so that excites me. Thank you, moms and dads who help get your kids here every week. We appreciate that. And I think you'll see some good things. Maybe rooms being a little bit cleaner, maybe dishes getting taken care of. We hope that also benefits you. Hey, good morning. My name is Troy. I'm one of the pastors here, and grateful that you joined us. It's beginning to feel and look a little like Christmas around here. Thank you for participating. As you heard, next weekend we'll be having our regular schedule of experiences, but I want to remind you the following weekend, no services on Saturday and Sunday. We're moving it all to Monday and Tuesday. And the reason we did this is that over last year we had over 1,600 people come to 3 services on Christmas Eve, and it was so packed, uncomfortable. We wanted to spread it out, but we wanted to give you room to be able to invite friends and family to come with you to Christmas Eve. This is a great opportunity to share the hope that we have, this pearl of great price that we have found with our community, with our friends. And so bring a friend. Don't come alone. Invite somebody. Maybe come on Monday night or Tuesday night, whatever works best for their schedule. But I encourage you, take advantage of this. It's going to be a wonderful evening. You can know what different times, and you can check that out, what works best for your time. So before we get into this new Christmas series that we're started this week, I want to begin by asking you, a ridiculous question. It's just dumb, but the reason it's ridiculous is because I already know the answer. I know what most of you are going to say, so you don't have to raise your hand or you don't have to say something out loud. Here's the question, and we'll jump right into it. Have you ever lost your way on the way somewhere? You ever lost your way? Some of you on the way here, you lost your way, perhaps. I don't know. The truth is that all of us have been lost at some point. We've kind of gone down a road that we didn't mean to. We just kind of were in a place. It's usually on the way to somewhere that we've never been before. You know, we're like, well, I don't know exactly what to do here. Maybe some place that you're headed to or some town that you're unfamiliar with. I know this. I admit that I sometimes lose my way to places that I've been multiple times. Just the older I get, I just kind of, how did I get here? For example, I will get sometimes in my car. Has this ever happened? This might scare you to be on the roads. I'll get in my car and I'll get a phone call and I'll start talking to someone and I'll start driving. And next thing I know, I'll find myself in some neighborhood on the other side of town, just kind of driving in circles as I'm talking. And then I'll get off the phone like, how did I get here? This is weird. But it's crazy. It's crazy to kind of have that experience. Maybe, have you ever been hiking and felt like, wait a second, I don't know where I'm at. We're a little lost. That is terrifying when you're kind of in a place where you're like, I don't know where we are. It's kind of scary. Maybe, have you ever been lost in a shopping mall? Oh, of course not. No, I've been there where I'm like, I don't even remember where I came in. How do I get out of this place or some big hotel? I've gotten lost. I get lost in parking garages often. The levels are all the same. In fact, when I go to the airport now, I make a habit that I take a picture of the little sign in the section so I can make my way back to where my car is. A few years ago, Julie and I, we had a chance to go to Italy, and we went to Venice, which is just this unbelievable city. It's gorgeous, but all the little canals and bridges and alleyways, it's so easy to get lost there, and we did. And it was fun, but it was kind of freaky at the same time. It's unsettling. And here's one of my points. The interesting thing about being lost or getting lost is you never really know the moment that it happens. You never know when you kind of cross over from the I know the way to I've lost my way. You never know that moment. It kind of comes late. In fact, by the time that you realize that you've lost your way and that you're lost, you've probably been lost for quite some time. By the time you're like, whoa, wait a second, I've been in this for a little bit. And that's when you begin to panic and you freak out and you do some weird things. In fact, Julie, she says that the first sign to her that I'm lost when we're driving is I start driving faster. Which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, I panic, I get anxious, I get impatient, and I speed up because why? I want to get rid of that feeling of being lost in space and get back to knowing where I am. And of course, speeding up just makes it worse. The thing about losing your way is that if you're, what is true about losing your way on a road or on a trail somewhere or even in a mall is true of losing your way in life. It parallels very easy, and that is this, is that we're lost before we know it. We're lost before we really know it. And when I say losing your way in life, I mean, in life, or maybe one specific area of your life or one part of your life that has kind of not worked out the way you want, or has kind of hit a place that you didn't want to be. You know this. You've lost jobs before you knew it. Someone else knew it before you, but you lost jobs before you knew it. You've lost relationships before you were aware that it was that bad. Your marriage can be lost before you really know it. And so we are lost often before we know it. And you're just going along, and your foot's on the pedal, and the radio's up loud, and suddenly it dawns on you, where am I? How did I get here? This is not where I want to be. This isn't good. This is not the place. It suddenly occurs to you how far off track you are from where you want to be. And you kind of go, what? When did this happen? When did things fall apart? When did we start going in opposite directions, right? When did this get so funky? This thing, this relationship, this habit, it started out magical. It was fun. I loved it. It was magical. And now it just kind of feels a little bit more medicinal, right? I just feel like this is something that I used to want to do, and now I just have to do it. I'm here. I got to do it, right? This little habit that I started, was really helpful for a while, and now it's kind of turning inside out, and I feel stuck. I can't get out of it. I can't get out of this mindset. I can't get out of this feeling, this depression, whatever I'm feeling, or maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you're like, and again, that happens. You're like, man, this used to be pretty easy between us, but now it feels like work. It feels like you're going that way and I'm going this way. You might kind of start recalibrating, going, I thought you were the right person and that this was my happily ever after. And I don't know if I'll ever be happy again, right? And we begin to question ourselves, and we're thinking, wow, I think I've lost my way. I think I've lost my way. You might not use that terminology. You may not say it that way, but you'll go, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted for my life. This one for my marriage, my career, whatever it is. And how do I get back to where I was before? How do I get that back, that place? And so, now here's the thing. This is true. Again, I'm just kind of trying to set the stage for this series. We're lucky sometimes because sometimes friends or family will come to us and they'll speak to us and they'll try to warn us, as we're going on our way. It's interesting when they do that, they often use directional language. They'll use language that you would use on the road. They'll say, hey, they come up, I'm sorry, I don't feel like you're headed in a good direction. They might say something like that, or they might say, you know what, I'm a little worried about the path that you're on. We've all heard that from parents before. I'm worried about this road that you're going down. I'm not sure this is going to get you where you want to go. Or they might even get more specific and a little more in your face and say something like, you know what, I just think you need to turn your life around. To which when we hear that, we respond, thank you for not minding your own business. Thank you for that. I'm fine. Seriously. But you've heard that, or you've said it before where you're like, I'm okay. I'm fine. Or you've heard it. You've gone to somebody and they're like, I'm fine. I'm okay. But you know that they're not. They're headed down a road that's going to lead to not where they want to be. And maybe someone has come to you and has said, are you okay? Are you okay? We need to hear that. I remember a few years ago, my friend Eric Meyer, I don't know if he's here this morning, but he'll remember. Eric Meyer's a local anesthesiologist, Dr. Meyer. He said, hey, you want to go work out with me? I'm like, sure. And so he took me to a place that I would never go otherwise. CrossFit, that's like the worst workout place ever. And here's why. I was there, and they make you do weird things with dumbbells and medicine balls, and you're doing squats, and it's like old school gym stuff. And I'm about 15 minutes into the routine of what he told me to do, and he comes up to me, and he takes his glasses off, and he gets in my face, and he goes, are you okay? I'm fine. What are you talking about? He's like, maybe we ought to sit down. I'm like, I look that bad? He's like, yeah, you need to listen to that. You need to listen when someone comes and says there's something wrong. And so we get kind of prideful about that. And so you know that you've been in a place where someone's like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And they say, yes, it's fine. And then it doesn't turn out okay. In the last 3 weeks in our community, we've lost 2 people, 2 men who have found themselves at a place that they didn't know what to do next. And so this is real. This is something, maybe this isn't your gig. Maybe this isn't where you are today, but someone is. And so here's the fascinating thing. At least I think it's fascinating. Here it is. 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago. That's 1,000 years before Jesus was born. King Solomon said something that's fascinating to me. And the reason it's fascinating is that it was true 3,000 years ago. And it's still true today. It's like, man, you'd think that humans would have evolved. But this statement is still true. Solomon said this. He says, there is a way that seems right to a man. There's a way that seems right to a man. It looks right to us. It feels right. And so we choose to go down that way. We choose to follow that way. And we do this in our life, the way we live, the way some of us work, the way we play, the way we date, the way we parent our kids, the way we spend our money. We have chosen those ways, the way we do those things. We've chosen those ways because they seem right in our mind, in our heart. This is the right way to go, right? Think about it. When you started dating back in the day, you chose a specific way. You chose a place to go and look for a spouse, and you were convinced that that was the way that would help you find someone good. And then you found someone, and then you quickly got married. Why? Because you were convinced that you knew the way to find happily ever after. But as you know, some of us were wrong. That wasn't it. And Solomon would say that there is a way that seems right to a man. Now, before I read to you the rest of what he says, you'll notice a ... ellipsis there. Before I read the rest of it, I want to read you my version of what he says because his is a little harsh. I'll tell you mine. Here it is. There's a way that seems right to a man, but just because it seems right doesn't mean it is right. Right? Just because it feels right and looks right doesn't mean it's the best way. And this is why you and I, we can be lost, going the wrong way, full board, and not know it because it seems like it's the right way to us, right? But here's how Solomon put it. He said, there's a way which seems right to a man, but in the end, it is a way of death. It is a dead end. There's a way that seems right to us, and we know this, but it has the potential to kill us or to kill that which is important to us, right? And you've seen that play out before in your life and in other people's lives. You get involved with someone or something, and you thought it would be good, but it turned out to be not so good, and it ended up taking you to a place emotionally, physically, spiritually that you didn't want to be. And that way killed a relationship, a marriage. None of us intended that. It just seemed right, or a career, or perhaps a dream that you had. We were confident that we were choosing the right way, and it was until it wasn't. And we find ourselves at a dead end. And it's real. And here's the thing, we didn't realize it until it's too late. That's the truth. We were in too deep, or we were in too far, or gone too far. And we may have had friends and family that kind of tried to warn us, but we didn't listen. and now we are in that place. And when we start thinking about if you're here and you're in that place, I know what you'll do when you go, hey, how are you doing? And you get honest. You'll use directional language to describe where you are. It's fascinating. You'll say, well, I'm in a bad place. Or I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of here. I don't know how to get through this thing that I'm going through. I'm not sure where to turn anymore. I don't know how. I want to, but I don't know how to get back to being that person that I was before. I need to change. I need to change direction because I have lost my way. And like I said, maybe this isn't a distant memory for you. Maybe this is your current reality, and I'm glad that you're here. Maybe this is why you're here, because you've lost your way recently in some area in your life, and you've hit this thing, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I want to commend you. You're here, and you know it because you're mature enough to recognize it, and you're secure enough to admit it. And that's big. You've already, whether you know it, you've already taken the first step of getting your life turned around. You've acknowledged where you are. And that's a huge step, and here's why. Because you can't get to where you want to be until you recognize where you are. There are areas, I promise you, that are in our blind spot that we're headed down and we're doing things that are going to get us and take us to where we want. And until you get real about it, you can't get to where you want to be and have what you want in your life until you recognize where you are. That's step one. And here's the sad thing. Some people never get there. There are people in our lives that we see this, that they refuse to slow down. They refuse to look in the mirror and admit that they've chosen a way that's going to end in a dead end for them, right? And they stay lost. They're perpetually in this cycle, and it seems like they're just driving faster and faster, and they're blaming everyone and everything for their problems and for the way their life is turning out. But Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, said, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is in death. It's a dead end. It's a bad end, and it's a sad end. So I think this is something that we wrestle with in life. Now, you may be sitting here going, okay, and what, pray tell, does any of that have to do with Christmas, Pastor Troy? That's right. Some of you are like, yeah, I came to church because it's Christmas time. What's all this doom and gloom and dead end talk, man? That's not cool, not fun. Here's why. I do have a point, and that is this, is that when you and I find ourselves lost in how to do something or how to get out of something, or we find ourselves at a dead end in some area in our life, here's what we do. We have a tendency to immediately start thinking of things that we can do to get ourselves out of that, to turn our life around. We begin thinking, okay, I got to get some new habits. I need these habits that I'm doing right now. I need to break them. Okay, got a DUI. I know enough to know what I need to stop doing. Or we need to make some decisions that'll help us. I got to break this off. This relationship is not panning out. Those are hard. Or I need to start some disciplines. I need to create some disciplines so that I don't find myself in that place. And all of those are good and necessary and helpful. But here's the thing. At Christmas time, you and I have been presented with another way. At Christmas, we are introduced to a person who offers us a better way. Someone who claimed to show us the way forward, the way through. And in fact, whose life was the way forward for all of us. Of course, I'm talking about Jesus. And some of you are like, oh, I knew you were going to get to him. And of course, yeah. But before you check out, because you think I'm about to get religious, don't, because I'm not. I'm actually going to do the opposite. I want to get real. I want to talk about reality. And here's how I want to do it. One of Jesus's best friends when he was on earth was a fellow by the name of John. Now, John was a young man, and he had dreams for his life, and he connected with Jesus and followed Jesus, and he was convinced that Jesus of Nazareth, this is true, he was convinced that Jesus of Nazareth was actually God in a bod. That what he was looking at was God. He tried to explain it in his gospel in John 1:14. John described Jesus this way. He said, the Word became flesh. God became flesh, and he made his dwelling among us. It's his version of the Genesis in the beginning, right? He's like, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. In other words, John would say, God came to earth in a human suit, and he lived with us, and he walked with us, and talked with us. Now, I get that sounds odd and strange, maybe to you, but for just one moment, if you would, I want you to imagine that when I say that and read that, I'm not reading the Bible. I want you instead to imagine that we're reading the words of a real person who really lived and who wrote down what he really saw. Because that's what John is. It's an eyewitness saw something. And John is telling us in the best way he can his experience with Jesus of Nazareth. And he's trying to describe, maybe poorly, I don't know, but in the best way he can, he's trying to describe, let's face it, what is indescribable. How would you describe it, right? He's trying to tell us in the best way he can that he was convinced that God came in human form. That God came in human form. And this was hard for him because as a Jew, that was kind of not what he was used to. And as a Jew, he had read and studied all of the descriptions of God in the Jewish scriptures. But even after reading all of that and knowing all that, would be hard for him truly to be able to have a clear picture of what God was really like, because God was shadowy. God wasn't always obvious to him. And so it was hard for him to do that. But after meeting Jesus, John said, hey man, I don't know how to put it. The words that I read have become flesh and blood in front of my eyes. We walked with him. We talked with him. We ate with him and we camped out with him. Heck, we even cried and laughed with him. And we followed him for 3 years, and we watched him, and we watched him die, and we saw him alive again. And when it was all said and done, I get it, as crazy as it sounds, we were all totally convinced that God had shown up on this planet in person. In person. He goes on, he says this, he says, we have seen his glory. We have seen God face to face, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father. And watch what he says next. I love it. Full of grace and truth. I love that. One of the first descriptions he gives of Jesus and God in human form is grace and truth. And I think that this was maybe surprising to John. It was kind of shocking to him because his religion had led him to believe that God was mostly interested in the truth and in the law and in the rules. That was kind of what had happened to Judaism. And it convinced him that that's what God is mostly interested in. But when Jesus showed up, John said, man, he was full of truth and he was full of grace. It wasn't one or the other. He wasn't shape-shifting from one to the other. He was both at the same time. He was 100% truth and 100% grace 100% of the time. He would say that Jesus never watered down the truth. He never watered down the truth, but he also never dialed down the grace that he showed. In fact, I think John would say this, that when he was in the presence of Jesus, I think John would say, you know what, when I was near and with Jesus, I was always aware of my own sinfulness. I was always, when I was around Jesus, I was aware of just kind of a cute sense of my brokenness and my failings of being the best version of myself. But at the same time, even more than that, I was aware of God's love for me. I mean, it's a weird dichotomy. When I was around him, I'm like, I know I'm not all that I should be, but man, I feel loved and accepted as that. It's crazy, he would say. Jesus was full of grace and full of truth. And this is why one of Jesus' most famous statements and descriptions of himself made more sense to his disciples when he said it than it does to us 2,000 years later. Think about this. On the night that Jesus was arrested, you remember, Jesus came to his disciples and said, listen, I'm leaving. I'm leaving you guys. And they were like, whoa, you can't leave, man. We're too far into this. We need you. You're everything to us. You can't leave. And Jesus said, listen, no. It's better for you if I go. But here's the thing. Don't worry. Don't worry. You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. And Thomas, kind of speaking for the other disciples, piped up and said, Lord, we don't know where you're going. We don't know where you're going. So how can we know the way? How can we know the way? And I think Jesus smiled, and he uses Thomas's question to make a bigger point about himself. He said this, he said, but you do know the way, Thomas. You do know the way. You've been walking with the way for 3 years. You've been talking with the way. You've been eating and camping out with the way. In fact, right now, this very moment, you are looking at the way. After all of this time that we've been together, you guys should know by now that I am the way. I am the way. Now, that's a famous verse, right? And a lot of people, it bugs them. They don't like that because it sounds exclusionary. It sounds exclusive, that if you're either in or you're out, I'm the way. But man, you and I have heard that 1,000 times, and this is why we get confused, because we feel like that. But we don't realize what Jesus is really saying. We don't realize that it's not exclusionary, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to us. Jesus is like, man, I am the way. And why? Because you know and I know that when we find ourselves lost in our life, when we find ourselves at the end of the rope and we lose our way, maybe in our marriage, or lose our way as parents, or lose our way in our career or in life in general, whatever it is, our tendency is to want to get in and fix it, to make it right, to make a list of things that we need to do to fix it. Right? We need to make a plan to get out of this and need to read some self-help books and that sort of thing. But here's the thing. God offers us something better than that. He offers himself. Right? At Christmas, God sent himself. He became one of us to show all of us the way back. The way forward, the way back to that place in our life where we had peace with ourselves, or maybe had peace with God, how to get back to that place. And so and again, I don't know who I'm talking to, and I don't know what you're going through, but when you find yourself in that place where we're going, man, how do I get back? Or how do I move forward? Jesus says, I am the way back to your best version of yourself. And you're like, well, how do I get through this thing? Jesus would say, I'm the way through. I'm the way through the mess that you've made here. And I am the way forward to the life that you've kind of dreamed and hoped about. But you've continually sabotaged to yourself, right? Because why? You saw a way that seemed right to you, and you followed it, and now you've kind of landed at a dead end in that place. And so all I'm suggesting is that his way requires you and I to have a different starting point. Instead of asking the question that we all ask when we mess up, when we've blown it, what should I do now? That's the question. What should I do now? I've made a mess of my life. I need to fix it. What should I do? The better question, and it's so quick, this is good, is who should I follow? Who should I follow? And the answer, according to God, is Jesus, that we should follow Jesus. Now, you might go on. But listen, think about this. You remember the angels in the Christmas story? They came to the shepherds at night, and they spoke to the angels, and they proclaimed this. This is fascinating. They proclaimed that the birth of Jesus was good news of great joy for all people. Not just the religious ones, not just the beautiful ones. For all people, good news of great joy for all of us. And the reason they could say that is this, you need to understand this, is that Jesus' way is the way we were all created to live in the first place. In the beginning, everything was perfect, and Jesus lived on this earth the way you and I were created to live on this earth, but we haven't been able to, or we didn't know how. I mean, Jesus, the way he lived and the way he loved, the hope that he brought, the joy that he lived with, the peace that he had, the power to see through. I mean, he could walk on water. Jesus' way is the way we were all created to live with in the first place. And again, you might be skeptical of that, and that's okay. But I suggest you look at the way that Jesus lived and the way Jesus loved, and you'll quickly realize that it's a better way than your way. I mean, if you're still having a hard time wrestling with this, think about this, that if 3,000 years ago, Solomon could point us to a dynamic that was true then and is still true today, then you and I can have a little bit of confidence that when Jesus showed up and said, I am the way, follow me, and you'll find the way to what you're looking for, that we could have a little confidence that maybe that's true. And here's one of the most amazing things is that this is an open invitation. It wasn't just for them. It was for us and for all time. And wherever you are in your life and wherever you are on your journey and how far off the trail you've gotten, you can start that process today. Before you change anything, before you get anything right, before you get yourself all cleaned up, you can start today with that. And so if any of you are at that place where you're just, and again, I can't predict who is going through. None of us can. But if you're in that place, the question you need to ask is, who am I going to follow? And you should decide now before you make things worse by choosing yet another way that seems right to you. Right? I get it. You might be reluctant to give him a try, but it's probably because because you've seen how some Christians live their lives, and you're like, no, thank you. Or maybe it's because you've had church people come up and tell you this is what you need to do. This is what you should do. You need to turn your life around. You need to get your life right. And you're like, if I could, I would. You've tried it before and it didn't work. And so here's the good news for us. His way, this is fascinating. His way simply begins with a decision to follow him. To surrender your way and to follow him. And you're like, well, what's the first step of that? Well, for me, 1989, I was 21 years old. I was not raised in church, and my life had hit kind of a place, and I was open to suggestions. And someone told me I would try Jesus, and as I learned a little bit about him, I'm like, what the heck? If this doesn't work, I'll go back to what isn't working anyway. And so in 1989, I said a prayer very similar to this. I said, Heavenly Father, God, if you're out there, show me the way. Show me the way. I've tried my way, and that seemed right to me, and it got me here. Show me your way. And so here's what we do at Christmas time. Think about this. We celebrate God becoming one of us to show all of us the way forward. At Christmas time, we celebrate that the Word became flesh, that God cleared up the misunderstandings, the misconceptions, and he lived with us, and he walked with us, and he talked with us, and he loved us, and he showed us the way. He didn't come to tell us what to do. You'll notice that. That wasn't his tendency, and he didn't come to tell us to follow the rules. He simply invited almost everyone he ran into, hey, follow me. Walk with me. Follow me. Follow him. And that's really one of the things that makes the Christmas story so astounding and inspiring to us, is that we're invited to this. We're invited to be a part of it. And here's how it all began. Luke says this. He says, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And everyone went back to their own hometown to register. You had to go where your family was from. Now, you remember the story. It says this, so Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, down near Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. And he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. Yes, there's a little scandal going on here, right? And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. And she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. And almost all of us here can quote the next line. Listen to this, it's fascinating. It says that she wrapped him in cloths, some rags, and she laid him and placed him in a manger. A manger was a trough. Imagine that. The way in a manger. In other words, our way forward our way through, our way back, was literally a baby wrapped up in rags, lying in a feed trough for farm animals. Only God could engineer this way. Think about it. Our Heavenly Father, the creator of the universe, came into our world. When he came into our world, he came in the usual way, the way like every one of us has come, vulnerable and exposed as an infant. God became one of us to show all of us the way back and the way through and the way forward in our life. And if you're here this morning and you're feeling like you've lost your way in some area of your life, you've kind of hit that place, I just encourage you today, take this step. I encourage you to just pray a little prayer, just a simple prayer, similar to that one I prayed, and begin praying it several times during the day as you kind of head towards Christmas. And I believe you'll begin to understand and see a way through. You'll see the way through. And so here's a prayer. Would you just bow your hearts with me maybe? And if you're humble enough to go, yeah, not everything is perfect. But Father, I realize that there is a way in my mind and in my heart that seems right to me. And I've tried it and it's not working. And so what I want is I want your way. Show me the way. Show me the way for my life. And I will, the best of my ability, as I look to Jesus, I will follow. I will follow him. Show me the way. Show us the way. With Jesus, I pray. Amen.